Hello all, and welcome back to Murder Drones. With the recent release of episode 7, there is a lot to talk about. From a flesh puppet to a cold awakening, we will try to answer every question we can about this episode. To start us off, let's turn to this insanity. Towards the end of the episode, we get a reveal that Tessa isn't actually Tessa, but rather Sin wearing Tessa's suit, and not just that one, a more literal Tessa suit. The audience seems to be split whether this means that Tessa was always Sin, or if the swap was made recently. Let's settle this debate right here and now. Towards the middle of the episode, Tessa approaches a monitor which requires a CAPTCHA to be completed. For this CAPTCHA, you must have a fingerprint to prove you are not a drone. Tessa stands up and removes her glove off screen, then presses the fingerprint scanner with a valid hand. Now, this may seem like it could be easily faked with a hand on hand? A recently acquired hand, but there is one thing that this person does to confirm that they are controlling this hand in some way. We can see the finger moving. These two frames shows the finger being actively moved at the knuckles. So we're done here, right? This proves that this isn't Sin in this shot, but Tessa, right? Hold your horses there, pal, because later in the episode, we see Sinsanity, coined and minted, it's the official name, no takesy backsies, with a human hand. But hey, pally, this hand isn't just human, but mobile. If we want to answer the question of Absolute Solver versus Tessa, we'll need to study both of them throughout this show. One of the biggest points towards Tessa being real up until this episode is something that happens previously in Dead End. 2/3 of the way through the episode, the Sentinel ends up biting Tessa, even though its objective is to only attack AI targets. Once this happens, Tessa begins bleeding and using this to her advantage around the other Sentinels, preventing them from attacking her. If she was Sin in this situation, why would she be bleeding when we've seen previously in the show that dolls release oil instead? Well, our answer to this question can be found in episode 7. Doll, a drone who is infected by the Absolute Solver program, confronts Tessa. She slices a doll's covered eye, and we can see blood, not oil, being released from it. We've also seen throughout this entire show that when Absolute Solver is used, it creates organic material as well. Absolute Solver can absolutely create blood, so this sadly doesn't do us any good in determining whether this truly is Tessa. If we go a little longer into the episode, however, we can see Tessa getting directly flashed with the boot loop beacon on the top of the Sentinels' heads. If Tessa was a drone in this sequence, she should be boot looping. At least, I think so. I mean, we know that if the Sentinel's beacon flash isn't directly into the eyes of the drone, it won't work. So could this helmet's visor be messing with the flash beacon? Well, there are two schools of thought here. If we are to assume that the helmet is enough cover to negate the beacon, it would explain why the Sentinel bit her in the first place. We can see through the Sentinel's HUD that their objective is to only eliminate AI targets, so the fact that it bit Tessa shows that the Sentinels weren't able to tell that this wasn't a drone. However, now we reach our second school of thought. What if the Sentinels were aware that this wasn't Tessa, but actually Sin, and thus a target? This would mean that when it detected blood on the bite, it couldn't process how this would be possible, and its internal code started to break. The helmet could still be enough protection for Sin, as we can see that drones close their eyes when Sentinels use their beacons, and even that seems to work. One quick thing to note, at the beginning of episode 7, we see Sentinels biting and growling at Mitchell the intern, who is clearly a human, which shows that Sentinels can be violent towards humans too, but we don't know their exact objective here, so we can't use this as evidence in one way or another. It would sadly seem that both options here are equally as likely if it was actually Tessa or if it was Sinsanity, so we need some better evidence. To find this, we're going to turn to episode 5, Home. When Sin attacks the gala, Jay and Tessa burst in to stop her. Sin then corrupts all the drones in the hall, including Jay, who shuts the door and locks Tessa inside. Later in episode 6, we can see an image of the aftermath, with Tessa sitting on the floor, horrified. It would appear that Sin let Tessa survive, supported further by what she says to her right before the incident.
You didn't have to see this.
She isn't saying this as if Tessa is going to be part of the massacre. She actively states that Tessa was never meant to be there in the first place and hints that Tessa won't be targeted even now. But once again, this still doesn't help us with our current situation. Both options are equally possible. We need to turn back to episode 7. When N is trapped under the cave-in and forced to cut off his arm, the worker drone version of V appears at the end of the hallway. V then changes into Sin and hugs N. This is very clearly Sin's doing, as revealed at the end of this sequence that it was all a hologram, but there's so many important things to go over here. When Sin shows N a brief moment of his time killing people, she then says this.
Thanks for clearing the way on this planet too.
In this sentence, the Absolute Solver program is revealing to us that it was forcing the disassembly drones to kill this whole time. This is, of course, something that we were aware of, but Sin also says this a few moments earlier.
You know, you're one of the main reasons I wanted your team to retain your personalities.
Sin has not only shown us that she is in charge, but proven to us how in charge she was. She is the reason that these 3 disassembly drones still have their personalities. She has enough influence to give orders and make demands. For our final piece of evidence, we need to turn back to Tessa fighting Doll. This time, we're going to focus on a lot more. We're going to specifically look at a few sentences. Our first one is this.
Had my suspicions. Thought they kept cutting my feed.
If this really was Tessa, why would they be cutting her feed? They should be providing her everything she needs to take down this rogue AI. In fact, we can confirm that this isn't the real Tessa here. After Doll says that she won't let it use her to consume the planet, Tessa says this.
Not sure it needs you, buddy.
Right after this, the fire behind Doll is put out, not from her own doing, judging by her scared reaction, and Sinsanity jumps out to kill Doll. This clearly isn't Tessa from this moment, but still, how can we finally be sure if this has always been Tessa or not? Well, if this wasn't Tessa, Sin would have been on this planet for a little while, most likely down in this cathedral. However, moments earlier, Tessa says this.
So that's what they were doing down here, huh?
We already know that at this moment, Tessa is actually Sinsanity, so this confirms that Tessa was Sinsanity the whole time. She doesn't know what's happening down here. You may be asking yourself, but how was Sin able to pretend she was Tessa for so long? Well, this isn't the first time she's pretended to be someone. In episode 2, we can see the Absolute Solver pretending to be detectives, Ted, Nori, Khan, and N. Not to mention that in this episode, it also pretended to be an entire cathedral full of people and actively pretending to be Tessa. It would seem that from the very first time we saw Tessa, she wasn't actually Tessa. Oh boy, now that we've got that out of the way, it's time to talk about the ending of this episode. After Uzi falls down the flesh hole, the bone zone, this thing. After Uzi falls into it, she wakes up in space, looking down at a planet with a large hole in it. Before we can fully get into it, there's a few things to note. Some people think that she might actually be dead here, but that is definitely not the case. Plot armor aside, when infected with Absolute Solver, not only does the drone's body naturally regenerate, but the heart is still active as seen by the jars in episode 6 and Nori. Secondly, the planet being shown here is definitely Copper 9, as comparing it to other images shows the 2 moons in the background and the rings around both this planet and one of the 2 moons. This planet is definitely Copper 9. Now, there are a few things that could have happened between Uzi falling and waking up outside the planet. The first is a large blast. Considering the frequency at which we've seen yellow beams of light being shot out from this exact location this episode, it would be likely that they are all leading to something. Of course, this is all connected back to the aftermath of Earth that we saw in episode 6, showing how the Absolute Solver destroys a planet with the big yellow beams, but the frequency of them in this episode hints to some sort of incident with this. What we are seeing could be the aftermath of that incident. An unconscious Uzi who is directly inside of where the blasts take place could have been in the middle of the largest blast yet, as shown by the size of this hole. This blast could have launched her into space, considering the height that we've seen these beams get before, and how she still appears to be directly within the line of debris leaving the planet. Judging by the position of the rocks around her, if she were on the planet during this blast, she would have been hit as well. As we mentioned earlier, because she is infected with the Absolute Solver program, she would not have been killed even after something as insane as this. So this is our first option for what happened. Unconscious, she was caught in the middle of the largest blast yet, which launched her into space where she finally woke up to witness the aftermath. The next option is a little more creative. It is possible that En and Nori got a hold of the keys to the intact space shuttle, grabbed Uzi, and left the planet before they were killed, but for some reason dropped Uzi off in space. It's very strange, but it is technically an option, so I guess it's something to be considered. This option is really bad. There is no explanation for why this could have happened this way, and it just seems insanely unlikely, so the first option is the best of the two. However, it's not something we can really know yet. At least for the ending of episode 6, we had a lot of information to go off of, and we were able to come up with better possibilities and some that were actually correct. Go watch that video if you want to see those predictions, but the point is that we can't really know with this. With the information that we've gotten in this episode, it seems that the first option could be likely, but it's still a really rough possibility and one I'm not very confident about, but hey, we're at least giving it our best shot. Welp, that's Murder Drones episode 7. If you have anything else you want us to talk about and try to solve, let us know down in the comments below. If you want to watch our previous Murder Drones theories to see exactly what we've gotten correct so far, make sure to click the playlist in the description of this video or at the top right of the screen. For those of you who have been with me for a while, I'd like to apologize for the long time in between uploads. There have been a lot of combinations, all combined with a difficult recovery, but I'm back. I try to keep my Discord up to date on things as often as possible, so make sure to check that out if you'd like more information and to talk to me and other viewers directly. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, and if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe. Check out my second channel, RemGames Games, as some new content will be arriving there very shortly. Like I said previously, make sure to check out my Discord and subreddit to talk to me and my team directly, as well as other viewers and theorists. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.